We're back here in overtime on WOTM. We'll stay with the football theme here. Now the FCS is done. Mark, you and I have been talking really since the fall of last year about what this season could look like. I think overall the FCS put a good product out there. Sam Houston State ended up being the champion, 10-0 overall, knocking off South Dakota State in the championship game. And it's one of those things where I think football in the spring felt weird. And you saw it from the winter time. You thought, will this work? I think overall it did work. It got these teams some exposure. And honestly, I don't know if they won't do this in the future, but I do believe some other leagues that want to do football in the spring have a good platform here, seeing what the FCS did.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought the USFL in the early 80s, played from like 83 to 85, was the perfect league to play in the spring, and then they chose to want to go to the fall, and then the league wound up folding. But you got to see in a time where football wasn't here for anybody but them, and they got their own showcase. Where in the fall they have to share. I mean, you just cannot expect to share with University of Alabama and University of Auburn, two SEC teams, and expect to get your due. They got their due, I believe, in the spring this year. A lot of people, if it weren't for COVID, probably a lot more people would have been involved in what they did. But they had a great fan base. You saw for the playoff games that it was something that a lot of people came out to watch. And it kind of broke your heart how the season ended with the injuries because you felt like there was maybe a little more they could do in losing to Delaware. Now, Delaware wound up losing to South Dakota State, who wound up losing to Sam Houston State. So it's not like they lost to a team that wasn't any good. But I just think that they probably would have liked to have had a healthy team to see what they really could have done in the FCS playoffs that we didn't get to see. But either way, it starts again in the fall, and they'll be back to the way it was before.
Let's look at the stats. FCS top 25 out today. Sam Houston, the undefeated champion overall, 10-0 on the year. South Dakota State coming in at number 2. Meanwhile, James Madison is 3rd. The team that beat Jacksonville State, Delaware, comes in 4th at 7-1 on the year. North Dakota State is 5th. Followed by North Dakota at number 6. Jacksonville State, one of the very, very few teams, put a little demarcation there, that played both in the fall, a 4-game non-conference schedule, and then also in the spring. And Mark talked about some of the injuries. They had some injuries in the fall as well, and also some injuries in the spring, most notably to starting quarterback Zion Webb. Southern Illinois finished 8th, followed by Weber State at number 9 and Eastern Washington at number 10. Some notables include VMI at number 12, that same conference that Sanford plays in. Richmond at number 15, Kennesaw State at 17, Murray State out of the OVC at number 18, ETSU also out of the Southern Conference, 4-2. You start to see that not a lot of these teams play the same amount of games. Austin Peay played 9 games. Alabama A&M played 5 games, 105, and Alabama A&M is in. Also receiving both Sanford and Northern Iowa, one of the powers there. So that is your top 25 for this year, and as Mark said, they'll play again in the fall. Meanwhile, a traditional spring sport is softball. The Alabama softball team found out where they will be seated in the upcoming NCAA tournament. They will host, and they will be the number 3 seed overall. They knocked off Florida in the SEC tournament. Mark, this is a team that I think that coming into the year, they had high expectations. And so far, I think they've met those expectations, and they put themselves in a pretty good position to not only win as their regional host, but make it to the Super Regional and possibly win a Women's College World Series.
Yeah, they win the 6th SEC tournament in school history. And also in the regional round, they have dominated the regional round. They've won 40 consecutive games in regional play, stretching back to 2007. That's the longest winning streak in Division I history, and they're 59-9 overall. And they've made the regional round every year since 2005.
Exactly.
So 45-7 overall. They have the SEC Player of the Year in Bailey Humphrey. They have the SEC Co-Pitcher of the Year and the SEC Tournament MVP in Montana Fouts. So there was a lot of individual awards to go with a lot of team awards, and their story's not yet done.
Exactly, and they'll host that regional coming up this week over in Tuscaloosa at Rose Stadium. How important is it for this team? We saw them win the SEC championship. They didn't have to even leave their city. They got to sleep in their own beds. Now they're going to be able to do the same thing at this regional site. How important is it just playing all these games at home here lately?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, they're the only SEC team to ever win the SEC tournament at their when hosting it, so they have that. And they were just more comfortable there. You notice their dominance in regional play, and For those that don't understand regional play, you have 4 teams in your region.
Right.
I believe Clemson, Troy, and Alabama State are the other teams in their region, and then they go into the super regional, and they've dominated pretty much every year they've been in there. So playing at home is just an extension into that this year. Number 3 overall seed, and they have a lot of wins against top 25 RPI teams too. They're number 1 overall in the NCAA and RPI. So there's a lot that we expect out of them, and I think that they're right where they want to be right now at home, and getting where they feel very comfortable in the regional leading to the super regional.
It's a team that is battle tested. Let's take a look at some numbers here. Overall on the season, they won 18 games in the SEC and 45 overall. As you said, number 1 in the RPI because they play a tough tournament, play a tough schedule overall, get themselves against really good competition early on before facing a really good teams in the SEC. As you said, won the 6th SEC tournament in team history, number 3 overall in the nation as it relates to the seedings for the NCAA tournament. The other teams in the regional, Clemson, Troy, Alabama State. Troy, another team having a really strong season. They also hosted their conference championship as well. Louisiana is in that tournament. 19 wins against teams in the top 25 and top 30. 30 against teams in the top 50. Player of the Year, Bailey Hemphill. You saw some of the video of her. Great season so far. She can absolutely mash softball. And Montana Fouts, great player in the circle, also won the tournament MVP. In Tuscaloosa with the SEC tournament, looking to do the exact same in the regional tournament as they make their way towards Oklahoma City for the Women's College World Series. Well, speaking of postseason play, we will have some postseason play for you right here on WOTM. Take a look at the schedule starting tomorrow with the HSAA State Baseball Tournament. The championships begin tomorrow. Keep in mind, Game 2 and Game 3 can be seen right here on WOTM. You see the start time for Game 2 starting on Tuesday tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the 5A game. Following that is the Class 2A game, GW Long and Westbrook Christian. And then on Wednesday, we'll have Class 6A and Class 1A. Faith Academy, Hartselle, Bayshore Christian, and Donahoe. In Class 7A, Auburn and Hoover will start our production at 10 a.m. At 4 p.m., it is the 4A game between Mobile Christian and Aniana. And then in Class 3A on Friday, we have Phil Campbell and Bayside Academy. Keep in mind, what you're seeing on your screen here are Game 2s. If they need that Game 3, that'll be played right after Game 2, and those games will also be seen right here on WOTM as we crown baseball state champions starting tomorrow right here on WOTM. Coming up next here on Overtime, we'll stick with the playoff theme. We'll go to the NBA, a very interesting wrinkle the NBA is throwing into their playoff bracket. We'll iron it all out and give some predictions coming up next.